So what we're going to do now is we're going to start on the back. The front bolt here, they're actually just taking the nut and bolt out, slide it back a little bit, cut the head of the bolt off, and pull it out. Looking over the full parts list, we've got replacement bolts for the front here. We reused the ones in the rear, so I'm going to because you actually have to drop the gas tank and the exhaust just to get the bolt out to not reuse it. So we're going to cut the head of the bolt off, and then it'll slide out this way. Okay, we've got the front leaf spring bolt unhooked, cut the head of it off. Next thing we did was take both rear shocks off. Then we take the U-bolts off. Take the U-bolts off whichever side you're going to start on first. The other side you just loosen them up. That'll allow you to be able to articulate your axle and stuff, to be able to get your spring back underneath it, because we're going from the top side to the bottom side of the axle. That's why they call it a flip kit. We flip it from the bottom of the spring to the top of the spring. Now we take the rear hangers off, and then we should be able to pull the leaf spring out so we can do what we got to do. We've got to shorten one of these bolts that holds the U-bolt bracket on the top. That way the new bracket like it's supposed to. And then we should be good. Yeah. Removed factory spring perch, the new ones that they send to us, will go in next. The factory bolt is 13 millimeter, by the way. Alright, that's on. Tells us to unhook the brake line hanger. I'm not exactly sure why, but we're going to loosen it up on this one. The other side we may not do so. We've got the U-bolt hanger removed. So we're going to stick this back up in, cut the spring perch bolt off. One thing you do need to realize is when you cut these bolts off, it is in the instructions, but make sure you put clamps, make sure you put good C-clamps on both sides of the springs where both of the bolts are. You will have to remove both center pins. There's not just one center pin in these, there's two. And you will have to remove them both to get the plate off. And they say to mark the threads, take the rearmost center pin out and cut it off and put it back on. I just, after I put everything back together, took the cut-off wheel and just cut the bolt off pretty much even with the top of the nut, just a couple threads up. And that's the easiest way to do that instead of doing a whole bunch of marking and all that kind of stuff. So now we're going to put this back, start putting it back together for this side. Take our saddle now, put it on the bottom. One hole here, a slot. The slot goes towards the front, the hole goes towards the rear. The reason why we had to cut the nut off was so that the axle wouldn't hit the top of this axle pin. Alright, sorry here, but my lighting's not the best, but we tried to get you in position. Leaf springs hung back where its new home's going to be. One thing they don't tell you, they just tell you to remove the rear bolt, but you have to loosen the upper bolt back here also so you can get this thing to swivel around so you can get it to line up in the front. So both of those have to be loosened. This rear one has to be loosened. And one thing, just a side note, I don't remember if the instructions say to or not, but wait till you get everything put back together and it's sitting. Either take the weight off of it on a set of jack stands or something so you can get back underneath it, but you want to tighten up. You always want to tighten, do your final tightening on your suspension bolts with bushings and stuff at ride height. With full load on the suspension, that's where it needs to live at most of the time, and that's the way you want to tighten it up. So we're going to put the saddle on and our bottom spring perch and our U-bolts, and this side here will be somewhat complete. Then we'll move to the other side. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to leave these leaf springs here a little loose. Not a whole lot loose, but a little bit loose, because we got to do the same thing on the other side that we did on this side before we try to tighten anything up. The other side's pretty much identical to this side, so I'm going to get it knocked out, and then we will hopefully set this thing on a set of jack stands and let's snug everything up on the back side. The only other thing that has to be done on the passenger side is the front hanger bracket. There's two holes already in on this side. On the passenger side there's not, so we're going to have to drill those two 3/8 holes for the 3/8 bolts. And instructions pretty much tell you how to go about that. It's pretty self-explanatory. Put the bracket up there. You can either mark it and drill it, or use the bracket for a guide. So put your bracket up, drill your two holes, and bolt the sucker together and be done with it. So that's the only difference that I know on that side, except for taking the exhaust down if you don't want to cut your bolt off. I'm cutting the bolt off on the other side too, so we don't have to do all that. And we'll get back at it. Alright, as you can see, we have the F-150 back in the shop. It's been about 1,000 miles since I put the lowering kit on it from MaxTrac. The issue that I had, and I'll show you the dimensions that we had here originally, I ended up with about an inch lower in the rear than it was in the front. So here's the dimensions on this, if you can see, my before and my afters. And honestly, after driving it about 1,000 miles, we're still at about the same. So, we may have had just a little bit more settling in the front, but not much. We're still about an inch off from the front to the back as far as truck being level if you look at after measurements. And we're taking these measurements as they suggested from the bottom of the rim to the fender well lip. Now, I contacted MaxTrac and they have been great about this. They don't have any idea why we only got 1.5 inches of drop in the front either. We did have some discussion on whether it had to do with the alignment, whether everything was set at neutral when everything was tightened up and that kind of stuff, and I assured them everything was. I'm just as much at a loss as they are. But what they've done is they've sent me a set of rear shackles that will raise the rear up 1 inch, and we're hoping that once the rear comes up 1 inch, everything will settle out and do like it's supposed to. So that's what we're getting ready to do. We're going to put the 1 inch shackles in the rear, and we're going to recheck it again. I thought about trying to do a couple things in the front to see if we could get it to settle down, but honestly, I kind of like where it's sitting at. I do like the idea of bringing the rear up 1 more inch. 4 inches of drop is what I was looking for. We ended up with 5. I don't want to get into issues when I hook a trailer to this thing and try to tow, or if I haul stuff, because I'm still going to use the truck. It's not just a car with a bed. So it's still going to be usable. So we're going to raise the back of it up 1 inch, and let's see how that goes. And I'll show you what the kit looks like they sent to me. Alright, MaxTrac has been really great about this whole process. They went back through their data, they looked, everything looks to be right for them. This is just kind of the way things fall for a lot of us. Sometimes we just end up running into things that nobody else happens to have issues with for some reason. So here's what they sent to me. They sent me a set of lowering shackles for the rear. Or actually, they're actually lift shackles. Because like I said, we're at 1 inch, or we're at 5 inches lower. When we put these in, it'll actually raise the inch. We're actually at 5 inches low. It dropped the rear 5 inches when we did the flip kit. If you do the flip kit without the front relocation bracket, it drops the whole rear of the vehicle at 6 inches. Then you put in the front spring hanger, that picks it up 1 inch. Then you put these in and it picks it up 1 more inch. And that helps to hold everything into the geometry that you're looking for. Like I said, they've been phenomenal. They sent me 2 new rear spring hangers. We're going to put those on and see how it goes. Of course, according to them, they've never had any issues with this kit being installed on these trucks. Everything has always worked out well. Why I have an issue, I don't know, but we're going to find out. It's got the set of instructions, comes with 2 new bolts, comes with the grease fittings. You'll be able to put grease in here, so we don't have any issues with that. It does come with nice nylon bushings in the ends. And of course, like I said, it'll raise the rear of it up 1 more inch. So let's get to installing this, and let's go back and retake our measurements again and see where we end up at. Alright, what we've done here is we've jacked up the back of the truck. We put it up on jack stands. I took the rear tires off so we got enough room to travel. What they suggest you do is take the lower spring shackle bolt out. And what we're doing is we're actually replacing that shackle right there with a shorter one, which will actually pick the back of the truck up. So you take the lower one out, and then they say to raise the rear end up to get the bolt in the upper shackle between the frame and the bed, and then you can slide the bolt out. Well, since we've already done the lowering kit and stuff, it actually runs into an issue trying to do that. So what we've done, or what I've done, is I've taken the shock bolts loose, and what we're going to do is we're going to drop the rear end down. Then that way we can get that bolt out. We can slide the shackle out, slide the new stuff in it with the new bolts. New bolts go in the upper mount where the shackle attaches to the spring, and then use the stock bolt back on the bottom. Alright, we got the old shackle out, factory shackle I should say, and the new shackle is about to go in. And this right here will give you a little side-by-side comparison at the difference that we have between these two, which is roughly about 1 inch. I guess we could stick a tape measure on it if we wanted and check it, but that's about what we're looking, about 1 inch there. So one thing I did find out doing that on the rear, the easiest way for me to do it was Like I said, I dropped it down, took the shocks loose. I also had to drop the spare tire down. That way we could get the bolt out without too many issues. One good thing is if you've never had to take your spare tire out of your truck, this will give you a chance to learn how to do it. So this is the way I'm handling mine. To me, it's a little bit simpler than trying to fight with everything up over the top of the frame. And besides that, once you've lowered it, if you're wanting to raise this thing back up an inch, with the way it's relocated down here, it actually puts the spring hanger in a position where it really won't go up over the frame to get that bolt out. So this is really the only option you have. If you haven't lowered your vehicle and you just want to raise the back of it up an inch and you put these, you should be able to do it the way they're saying. 6 to 1, half a dozen the other, whichever way you prefer. I just found this a little bit simpler in my opinion. So we're going to get both of these shackles in. We'll get them greased up, and we'll get another measurement on it here in a minute and see where we ended up at. Okay, so got the new shackles on. I wish I could say it was pretty easy, straightforward, but it was pretty straightforward, but easy was not quite it. If you can tell, these things at full droop, which it is now, they're gonna hit. When you jack it up and you get the load on the springs, it has clearance. It's pretty tight, but it does have clearance. That's why they send that other bolt with the custom head and stuff on it, because you will need it for the clearance issues. It is touching right there, but it will clear once you get it jacked up. But like I said, the clearance is really tight. It did take a little bit of work to get it to come down to get the inside of the bolt in where the nut goes on. I actually had to get creative with a ratchet strap and stuff to pull it around. So again, it will go in the way I showed you, but you don't expect it to just fall right into place, especially if you already have a lowering kit and stuff on it. Like I said, I think that added a little degree of difficulty. If all this stuff would have been put in at one time, maybe it would have went a little bit smoother. But we're going to drop it on the ground now, torque the wheels down, settle it, and see what kind of measurements we got now. These bolts were tightened up with full load on the suspension, so just jacked it back up so I can show you what it looked like completed. But it definitely, we'll bring the back end of it up. We'll see how much. All right, we got everything in the truck, got it down, got it measured. Here's a look at what our measurements turned out to be. As you can see where we were at in the originally after we did the kit that they sent, and then this is where we're at after I did the 1-inch lift shackle in the rear, and this is the total that we have now as far as drop. We gained a 1/4 inch more drop in the front, which is nice, and we came up in the back, which levels the truck out really well. I mean if you look at the measurements, all the way around, we're pretty much a level, and that's what I was looking for. I would love to see it sitting just a hair lower, which can be done with some lowering springs in the front, but I don't want to go that route. The truck will be fine. I went back through, nut and bolted everything, checked all the hardware that we installed originally, double checked, make sure all that stuff worked out well. I think the truck sits a lot better. I like it more. Before I was a little frustrated when I'd come out and look at it and see it sitting down in the back and not sitting level like I wanted. This really does level the truck out. I think it really adds to the look of it. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I was able to help you figure some things out on this install. Sorry it's taking so long to get our videos done and out, but we've had a lot going on lately. If you got any questions, feel free to drop me a line. I'll be happy to answer what I can. If I can't answer them, I can hopefully point you in a direction that'll help. Enjoy.